Next to the fight of Wild Bill with the McCannell's gang, the fight of Buckshot Roberts at Blazer's Mill on the Mescalero Indian Reservation is perhaps the most remarkable combat of one man against odds ever known in the West. The latter affair is little known, but deserves its record. Buckshot Roberts, a mysterious figure on the frontier, hailed from Texas, but little was known about his origins prior to his arrival there. While some speculate that he was born in the eastern part of the country, no concrete evidence could confirm this. Roberts had a military background, having served in the United States Army and rising to the rank of sergeant before his honorable discharge. Like many other veterans of that era, he chose to remain on the frontier following his military service. At one point, Buckshot Roberts joined the renowned Texas Rangers and gained a reputation as a skilled Indian fighter. He had encountered the fierce Comanche tribe and suffered grievous gunshot wounds in the process. Remarkably, he had also found himself on the opposite side of the conflict, facing off against the very Rangers he once fought alongside. In a dramatic showdown, he bravely stood his ground against a group of 25 Rangers, narrowly escaping death despite sustaining severe injuries. As a result of those wounds, Buckshot Roberts' right arm was rendered so crippled that he could no longer lift a rifle to his shoulder. This handicap led to his distinctive moniker, Buckshot Roberts, derived from the nature of his injuries. And so, with his enigmatic past and formidable reputation as both a defender and adversary, Buckshot Roberts remained an intriguing figure on the ever-shifting frontier. Roberts took up a little ranch in the beautiful Ruidoso Valley of central New Mexico, one of the most charming spots in the world, and all he asked was to be let alone. For he seemed able to get along and not afraid of work. When the Lincoln County War broke out, he was recognized as a friend of Major Lawrence Gustav Murphy, one of the local faction leaders, but when the fighting men curtly told him it was about time for him to choose his side, he curtly replied that he intended to take neither side, that he had seen fighting enough in his time, and would fight no man's battle for him. This, for the time and place, was treason and punishable with death. Robert's friends told him that Billy the Kid and Dick Brewer intended to kill him and advised him to leave the country. It is said that Roberts had closed out his affairs and was preparing to leave the country when he heard that the gang was looking for him, and that he then allowed them to find him. Others say that he went up to Blazer's Mill on April 4, 1878, to meet a friend named Kitts, who, he heard, had been shot and badly wounded. There is another rumor that he went up to Blazer's Mill to have a personal encounter with Major Godfroy, with whom there had been some altercation. There is a further absurd story that he went to kill Billy the Kid and get the reward which was offered for him. These latter things are unlikely. The probable truth is that he, being a brave man, though entirely determined to leave the country, found it written in his creed to go up to Blazer's Mill to see his supposedly wounded friend, and also to see what there was in the threats which he had heard. There were 3 eyewitnesses of what happened at that time: Frank and George Coe, ranchers on the Ruidoso today, and Johnny Patton, a cook on the Carrizo Ranch. Patton was an ex-soldier of H Troop, 3rd Cavalry, mustered out at Fort Stanton in 1869. At the time of the Roberts fight, he was running the sawmill for Dr. Blazer. Frank Coe said that he was attempting to act as peacemaker and that he tried to get Roberts to give up his arms and not make any fight. At the peril of his life, Patton said that he had warned Roberts that Dick Brewer, Billy the Kid, and his gang intended to kill him. It is sure that when Roberts came riding upon a mule, still wet from the fording of the Tularosa River, he met there Dick Brewer, Billy the Kid, George Coe, Frank Coe, Charlie Bowdre, John Middleton, one Scroggins, and Dirty Steve Stevens, with others, to the number of 13 in all. These men claimed to be a posse and were under Dick Brewer, Special Constable. The Brewer party withdrew to the rear of the house. Frank Coe parleyed with Roberts at one side. Kate Godfroy, daughter of Major Godfroy, protested at what she knew was the purpose of Brewer and his gang. Dick Brewer said to his men, "Don't do anything to him now. coax him up the road away. Roberts declined to give up his weapons to Frank Coe. He stood near the door, outside the house. Then, as it is told by Johnny Patton, who saw it all, there suddenly came around upon him from behind the house, the gang of Billy the Kid, all gunfighters, each opening fire as he came. The gritty little man gave back not a step toward the open door. Crippled by his old wounds to not raise his rifle to his shoulder, he worked the lever from his hip. Here were a dozen men, the best fighting men of all that wild country, shooting at him at a distance of not a dozen feet. Yet he shot Jack Middleton through the lungs, though failing to kill him. He shot a finger off the hand of George Coe, who then left the fight. Roberts then stepped forward and pushed his gun against the stomach of Billy the Kid. For some reason, the piece failed to fire, and the kid was saved by the narrowest escape he ever had in his life. Charlie Bowdre now appeared around the corner of the house, and Roberts fired at him next. His bullet struck Bowdre in the belt and cut the belt off from him. Almost at the same time, Bowdre fired at him and shot him through the body. He did not drop, but staggered back against the wall. And so he stood there, crippled of old and now wounded to death, but so fierce a human tiger that his very look struck dismay into this gang of professional fighters. They withdrew around the house and left him there. Each claimed the credit for having shot the victim. "No," said Charlie Bowdre. "I shot him myself. I dusted him on both sides. I saw the dust fly out on both sides of his coat, where my bullet went clean through him." They argued, but they did not go around the house again. Roberts now staggered back into the house. He threw down his own Winchester and picked up a heavy Sharps rifle which belonged to Dr. Apple and which he found there, in Dr. Blazer's room. Brewer told Dr. Blazer to bring Roberts out, but, like a man, Blazer refused. Roberts pulled a mattress off the bed to the floor and threw himself down upon it near an open window in the front of the house. The gang had scattered surrounding the house. Dick Brewer had taken refuge behind a 30-inch saw log near the mill, just 140 steps from the window near which this fierce little fighting man was lying. Wounded to death, Brewer raised his head just above the top of the saw log so that he could see what Roberts was doing. His eyes were barely visible above the top of the log. Yet at that distance, the heavy bullet from Roberts' buffalo gun struck him in the eye and blew off the top of his head. Billy the Kid was now the leader of the posse. His first act was to call his men together and ride away from the spot. His whole outfit whipped by a single man. There was a corpse behind them and wounded men with them. 36 hours later, there was another corpse at Blazer's mill. The doctor, brought over from Fort Stanton, could do nothing for Roberts, and he died in agony. Johnny Patton, Sawyer, and Rough Carpenter made one big coffin, and in this, the two, Brewer and Roberts, were buried side by side. "I couldn't make a very good coffin," says Patton, "so I built it in the shape of a big V with no end piece at the foot. We just put them both in together. And there they lie today, grim grave company." M.O. Blazer, a son of Dr. Blazer, continued to live on the site of this fierce little battle, and he said that the two dead men were buried separately, but side by side, Brewer to the right of Roberts. The little graveyard holds a few other graves, none with headboards or records, and grass grows above them all. The building where Roberts stood at bay is now gone, and another adobe is erected a little farther back from the raceway that once fed the old mountain sawmill but is no longer used. The old flume still exists where the water ran over onto the wheel, and the site of the old mill, which is now also torn down, is easily traceable. When the author visited the spot in the fall of 1905, all these points were verified and the distances measured. It was a long shot that Roberts made, and downhill, the vitality of the man who made it, his courage, and his tenacity of life and purpose against such odds make Roberts a man remembered with admiration, even today in that once bloody region.